Okay, thanks. Okay, so I work in automation. I'm one of those people whose job it is to make machines do boring and unpleasant tasks so that human beings don't have to. I've been doing this sort of thing for about 10 years now, and right since the start, it always kind of bothered me a bit that a lot of people were apprehensive about the idea of automation eliminating work. Why, I wondered, would somebody not want to eliminate work? Work sucks, that's why you have to pay people to do it, right? The whole idea of treating work itself like it's some kind of a scarce resource that we have to cultivate and ration and protect for people, that's always felt kind of insane to me, right? But at the same time, it was also obvious to me that people were investing in automation research because they did want to eliminate jobs, and that would hurt people. And that didn't really feel right either. You know, obviously, technology should always make people freer and more prosperous. And automation is not fundamentally a bad thing at all. It's a good thing. So if automation is hurting people, then that has to mean that there was something wrong with the economy itself. And so that was a sort of intuition that led me to basic income originally back in around 2016. The idea of basic income always felt very compelling to me, but it also felt kind of confusing at the same time. And I think it's that way for a lot of people. You know, there are all these questions about like how to pay for it and the effect on labor incentive and inflation. And sometimes it's not even clear like what sort of question we should be asking. It's a very difficult thing to reason about. But I knew that I was interested. So 3 years ago, I attended this very same conference, and it was here that I met a man named Howlett, who is in the audience here. And he immediately struck me as having a very unique perspective on basic income. He's thinking very differently about it. It's hmm? Hmm. All right. So I thought, you know, yeah. So you think very differently about basic income and 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 what we should do about the problem of employment. Like, why is employment a problem, unemployment a problem in the first place, right? And so that was why I wanted to come here. Really, I wanted to talk about these ideas and like why this is like a very important ideas like for the movement. And explain it from the point of view of like a relatively normal basic income supporter who got sort of like converted a while ago. And because it really felt like you'd be like 2.0 for me when I learned about this. So if I could try and like distill the whole thing to like, you know, the most important concept to start out with, it's really the idea that we need to start thinking of employment as a means to an end in the first place, rather than as like the main purpose of the economy. Most of the time when people are talking about a better economy or a stronger economy, voters and politicians, left wing and right wing alike, they're imagining an economy that makes more and better jobs for people, as if the purpose of the economy was to make jobs. But jobs are not an output of the economy, they're an input. The economy uses people's labor to produce goods and services, just like it uses other resources like land and energy and raw materials, right? So a better economy really is one that makes more of the things that people need and want, using less inputs, using less labor, just like you prefer it to use less energy, less land, and less raw materials. Maximizing your use of labor is just as wasteful as maximizing our use of any other resource, right? Our time on Earth is very precious, and we should be trying to conserve it if we can. So why do we do this? Why do we pursue full employment? Well, we do it because if people don't have jobs, then they don't have money. And if they don't have money, then they can't buy the things that the economy is producing. Basic income guarantees that people will always have the aggregate income that they need to buy all the stuff that the economy needs and wants to sell them. And in doing so, it frees us up to automate to our heart's content. It means we never have to worry ever again that wages are going to be too low for people to buy stuff, because we have the basic income for that purpose. That's the true purpose of basic income. Wages still matter in a basic income world, but only as a labor incentive. They're beer money, not rent money. Wages are the reward that you get for doing the work that makes basic income possible. You sacrifice some of your time to make a bit more stuff, and in return, you get more money and you get to buy more stuff. That's how it works. But it's silly for us to rely, as we presently do, on private business to supply the bulk of the income for people to buy the output of the economy, because private business doesn't have that incentive. They're trying to take your money in return for goods and services. That's what they're good at. They're good at handling the supply side of the economy, but not the demand side. All else being equal, any profit-seeking business would prefer to employ fewer people and make the same amount of stuff, right? And that's a good thing if they can do that. It means they're using people's time more effectively and more efficiently. But it means that we can't rely on the wages as like the primary income source. We need basic income for that purpose. So there's a lot of debate over what the level of basic income should be. A lot of numbers get thrown out. Which number is the right number? A lot of people think that basic income means basic needs. So it should be a subsistence income. It should be just above the poverty level, however you want to define such a thing. A lot of people think that it's a safety net and that it's there to sort of catch people if they fail to make their money through the labor market the proper way. And then maybe they'll go and get a job later or something, right? People say these things. But that's because people are thinking of themselves as workers first and foremost. But remember, the economy exists to serve you, not the other way around. So with that in mind, why would you ever want the level of basic income to be any lower than the maximum level that the economy can productively respond to? Right? There is a limit to how much basic income spending the economy can absorb, but that limit doesn't really depend on how much money we can raise through taxes. It depends on how much stuff the economy can make. And Alex and I call this the natural rate of basic income. This is the level that we think basic income should be set to. But there's no way to guess what the natural rate of basic income is a priori, right? Because it depends on a lot of complicated things like the elasticity of supply and on the effect that basic income has on labor incentives and what people choose to do with their basic income. So there's no way to sort of guess what it is. Instead of throwing out sort of an arbitrary figure and trying to target that, what you need to develop is a policy that allows you to calibrate basic income, kind of like in the way that central banks are adjusting interest rates all the time in the background. You need to have an ongoing policy that lets us start where we are now at zero and then gradually increase basic income until you reach the natural rate. You have to feel it out empirically. A lot of people think of basic income as a very futuristic idea. You often find it sort of mentioned near the end of a book somewhere in some sort of like speculative future tense kind of context, like it's some sort of thing that becomes feasible at some time in the future when we reach some mysterious level of technological advancement, and then suddenly we can do basic income. But they can never say exactly what that level of technology is, right? And of course they can't, because it would be a very arbitrary thing. It doesn't make sense for such a threshold to really exist, for basic income to go from being infeasible to feasible all at once. What does make sense is that if you have better technology, then you can have a higher basic income. It raises the natural rate of basic income, like other things that let us make more stuff, right? The amount of production that the economy can perform is what allows you to pay basic income. The more stuff the economy can make, the more money you can give people with which to buy it. And this is really the only way to pay for basic income in real terms, or for any other kind of government spending for that matter. UBI is also often discussed in terms of justice or welfare, but I noticed that we don't tend to discuss things like, for example, central bank policy in those sorts of terms. Right, when central banks adjust interest rates to control inflation, or when they backstop the financial sector during an economic crisis, nobody calls that, compassion or charity or anything like that. That's just sound economic policy, right? And I want basic income to be thought of like that, because the business of economics is all about maximizing collective prosperity, and basic income needs to claim its rightful place in that conversation. We should have armies of economics PhD students fleshing out all the little details of how basic income works. It should be the only thing that economists are talking about. And because every large economy, one way or another, has to find a way to get money to its consumers so that they can buy the stuff that the economy makes. And if you don't have basic income for that purpose, then you're forced to do other things that are economically very unsound. The standard remedy for poverty in today's world is job creation. People look at a place like the northeast of England, where I live, and they see a lot of poverty there, and they immediately conclude these people are poor because they don't have jobs. We have to get more jobs for them. How do we make more jobs? Well, you could have like a big government jobs program, like a federal jobs guarantee or something, but that's kind of unpopular and controversial. People prefer that we make our jobs organically in the market through economic growth. Is there something the government can do to stimulate the economy so that maybe it grows faster and makes jobs a little bit faster? Well, there is one thing they can do. They can do that by stimulating the financial sector, by lowering lending requirements and lowering interest rates. The central bank can use its position at the top of the monetary hierarchy to basically make it easier for businesses to borrow. The thinking is that small businesses usually have to, have some investment up front to get off the ground, and large businesses have to borrow to cover shortfalls in their cash flow. So if you make it easier to borrow, then you're helping to create new jobs through new businesses and to support existing businesses. And that's how you get jobs to people. Expansionary monetary policy allows the government to supply businesses with money without having to do any taxing or borrowing itself, because the borrowing all takes place in the private sector. This is how we currently support full employment at the level of monetary policy. We are encouraging private banks to lend money and thus create money by lending to businesses in the hope that some of that money then trickles down to consumers via their wages. This approach has some problems, apart from the fact that it clearly fails to get money to everybody, hence homelessness. You may also have noticed that the financial sector tends to explode every 10 years or so. Every time there is a banking crisis, like 2008, people are very quick to point the finger at all this financial overexuberance, and rightly so, right? But we always find ourselves making the same mistakes over and over again for some reason. And by now it should be fairly clear why that is, right? We are forced to keep overstimulating the financial sector in an effort to create jobs because we don't have basic income. If we had basic income, then we could raise interest rates and we could raise lending requirements. We could rein in the excessive lending and stabilize the financial sector. So if it sounds like I'm saying that 2008 might not have happened if we'd had a basic income at the time, I sort of am saying that. And it gets even worse than that too, because not only does financial stimulus destabilize the financial sector, but also the jobs that it does create are unproductive make work. Right, a lot of people feel like their jobs are meaningless or not really contributing anything, but they get a little bit gaslit by this. I think that the standard line from economists is that if you feel like your job is meaningless, then it can't really be, right? Because after all, why would a private profit-seeking business pay someone to do something useless? Right, David Graeber wrestled with this question a lot in his book, Bullshit Jobs. And he proposed a bunch of sociological and microeconomic reasons, but he didn't really touch on any sort of macroeconomic ideas for how this could be happening, or what it even exactly means, how you define such a thing as make work in the private sector. Well, this right here is the macroeconomic theory of bullshit jobs, right? Because if a business is able to keep on borrowing indefinitely, then it doesn't have to be useful. The business itself isn't useful if it's not getting its money by serving customers. If it can keep on borrowing or securing investment from investors who are themselves borrowing, then the business can grow and hire people and pay them without ever having to serve a single customer. So we effectively already have like a giant make work government jobs program, but we're getting the private sector to do it for us. And this is not a widely appreciated thing. UBI advocates are often trying to sell basic income by claiming that it will create jobs, and people are often skeptical of that. A lot of people think that if we had a basic income, then it would lower employment, and I'm one of them. But I don't have to see that as a bad thing, though, because I know that employment is not the point of the economy. The point is to make things, and it's okay for employment to go down as long as production is still going up. A lot of people, I think, deep down, they're kind of drawn to the idea of basic income because they like the idea of being free and not having to have a job. They want to escape the rat race. But people are super embarrassed about admitting this. We have a very strong sort of Protestant work ethic, something like that, perhaps. People identify as workers because it's useful that we do so. It makes us more employable, and it makes us more survivable in that sense. And there's a strong sort of sense of moral hazard about allowing people to have money for nothing, or we are worried that people will quit their jobs, right? But the idea of make work and the idea of private sector make work lets us sort of defuse this tension, because make work is work that you can feel good about eliminating because it's just wasting people's time. It's not really doing anything. So yeah, I think it's kind of a big deal, right? This is the first time I've seen like a macroeconomic definition or theory of a private sector make work, and it matters for a couple of reasons. Number one, yeah, it means you can lower employment without necessarily worrying that you're hurting the economy because you're eliminating bait work, right? It wasn't doing anything anyway. And number two, it means there's some truth to the argument that people make sometimes that we've had technological revolutions in the past, but we've not run out of jobs yet. So what makes this time any different? They're half right about that, but what they don't realize is that, yeah, we have made new jobs, but they're not necessarily productive jobs. We've been doing this make work thing for a long time, and we've gotten pretty good at it. We can keep doing this, right? So we can't just rely on UBI we can't rely on automation to force UBI to happen by eliminating all the jobs, because we'll just make more of them. So yeah, I think these ideas generally are, I think these are massive for the basic income movement, and they're massive for the world of economics as well. Right now, most people in the UBI movement are very focused on advocacy and activism. We're trying to sell the idea of basic income to voters and politicians and other activists and try to build a movement for it. I think we could move quite a bit faster if we focused a little bit more on scholarship and on theory. Basic income is really an economic paradigm shift first and foremost. And it's a lot easier to sell it, I think, if we've got some actual economic theory behind it. We can produce a vision of basic income that's a lot, bigger and more compelling and cooler and more transformative than what most people currently have, I think. We can sell an economy that literally and explicitly works for everybody, instead of everybody working for the economy, which is what full employment means. We can sell a relationship with money that emancipates people instead of enslaving them. We can sell a basic income that's a lot higher than subsistence level. It should be at the highest level that it feasibly can be. And we can sell basic income as a missing piece of vital economic infrastructure instead of as another welfare policy or a safety net. But it's difficult to sell basic income if we don't have any theory that backs it up. So that's why in December of last year, Alex Howlett and Derek Van Gorder and myself created a new nonprofit economics think tank called the Gresham Institute, with the aim of exactly this, establishing the economic groundwork for basic income. This has been a very high-level overview of our thinking. So if you're feeling interested but confused, then that's understandable. Go check out our website. Lots of great content on there. Or better still, come and find me later. Alex and I will be here all night, and we like talking about basic income. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. We've almost run out of time, but I think we can have about 5 minutes or so for final questions. So I'll come here first.